After some endgame farming, I've unlocked 2 specific weapon decorations that boosts the Black Eclipse build I posted earlier to a whole new level. Because this build hinges on some very rare decorations and a pretty decent Artian weapon, I would use this as an upgrade to that video's build. If you just got to high rank or you're not at the true endgame yet, my previous dual blade build, link on the top right of the screen, is much easier to build and still very strong, so I recommend using that first. With that said, the 2 decorations I'm referring to is Master's Touch and Element 3 of whatever element you're using plus 1 crit element. Master's Touch is amazing for damage uptime, especially for dual blades, with an 80% chance to not take away sharpness whenever we crit. To make sure that this is as consistent as possible, with this build we're going to be working towards getting 100% affinity for as long as possible. Even with that goal in mind, this build is an optimal generalist build, designed to work with any sort of dual blades. It is not tailored to fight anything specific, instead it's focused on being consistently strong no matter the encounter. As long as you switch to the proper element for that encounter, you'll be melting anything that stands in your way. To showcase the statistical power of this weapon, it will take my 295 raw attack damage to 400 raw damage, and my 408 elemental damage to 503 element damage. Without coefficients beefing up the numbers, this translates to a base raw attack of 211, an element of 408, that will then be amped to 286 raw and 503 element. For dual blades, a 75 raw attack increase is staggeringly high, especially when this damage increase is consistent. For this setup, we're going to be using 4 pieces of the Gormagala beta set. Well, 3 and 1 alpha because I'm trying to save on gems, but you can do 4-piece beta if you would like. Namely the head, body, waist, and legs, to fully utilize the Black Eclipse 2 set bonus. With this 4-piece set bonus, we'll gain 10 raw attack whenever we are inflicted with Frenzy, and whenever Frenzy is cured, the armor set bonus will then grant us 15 raw attack instead of 10. When we use 3 pieces of the beta set, we gain access to another set bonus called Adrenaline. This skill will probably not show up most of the time, but when it does kick in when you lose enough health, it is a nice insurance to make sure that you have enough stamina to dodge the next attack that will probably kill you. When slotting in decorations, all the skills we will get from this build includes Weakness Exploit level 5. This skill grants us 30 affinity when hitting weak points and an extra 20% when attacking wounds. This makes it 50% total, and when paired up with all the other affinity sources in this build, we're going to be reaching 100% affinity, which translates to high uptime on Master's Touch. Next, we're going to get Burst level 2. At level 2, Burst grants 10 raw attack and 60 element. Going to level 3 would increase this bonus to 12 raw and 80 element. While that increase to elements is enticing, taking that additional point and putting it into something else will yield us more damage, and with how dual blades are designed, we'll have a pretty consistent uptime on this skill. The skill I'm referring to is Adrenaline Rush 1. It grants 10 raw attack for 30 seconds when we land a perfect dodge. With dual blades, we want to constantly be proccing the demon dodge boost anyways, which increases our attack damage value by 20%, and this will last for 24 seconds. Next up is Antivirus 3, which amps up the affinity we gain from curing Frenzy from 15% to 25%. The armor set will come with a default of Coalescence 1, which grants us a percentage increase in element. For general usage, I'll be slotting in another Coalescence decoration, boosting it up to 2. With the build I'm running, this increases my elemental damage by 35 whenever a blight or affliction is cured. If you prefer something more consistent, Ambush, Stamina Surge, and Part Breaker are all great alternatives. Next up, by slotting in 3 levels of Marathon Runner, we'll slow down the drain of our Demon mode by 50%, which pairs up really well with lower cost dodges from level 3 Constitution and more iframes from level 3 Evade Window. With this combination of utility skills, our mobility, survivability, and ease of access to Adrenaline Rush alongside the Demon Dodge boost increases exponentially. And we can't forget that the Gormagala Pants gives us 1 point in flinch free, which could in some very rare instances save you from getting carded. For charms, you can either go the Weakness Exploit Charm level 2 or the Burst Charm level 2 depending on what decorations you have. Either way, aim for level 5 Weakness Exploit and level 2 Burst. Before we jump into our weapon choices, what has been your favorite equipment skill to play with so far? Let us know in the comments below. And while you're down there, support your boy by hitting that like button and subscribe for more Monster Hunter Wilds content. Thanks. If you're looking for people to play with, join our community squad. The squad ID is on screen and in the description below. Managing sharpness can be a huge struggle for dual blades as his weapon type attacks constantly, which is why Master's Touch is such a valuable skill. Anytime we crit, there is a 1 in 5 chance that we'll lose our sharpness. With 100% crit, our damage uptime increases significantly. We no longer have to pause what we're doing to sharpen. while hitting wounds with the setup that we have, we'll be sitting at 75% crit. To achieve that 100% success rate, we'll be using a 25% affinity Artian weapon. After getting the affinity refinements you need for that 25%, I would highly recommend focusing for 1 refinement of sharpness and the rest being on raw attack. If you really want to min-max, you can take away that 1 refinement of sharpness and put more attack damage on it. The extra sharpness for comfort is great just because 1 point of that refinement is much better than 1 point of the handicraft weapon skill itself. Depending on the encounter, sometimes having elements can be better than raw, but that depends on what we're doing. Right now, we only have Tempered Arc Weld and Gore Magala to worry about, so until we get title updates where more element matters, this is a good setup. I really like using 2 attack, 1 affinity, 1 sharpness, and 1 element just because I like being well-rounded, but if you want to min-max, raw damage is the way. Speaking of min-maxing, Corrupted Mantles' 10% affinity makes 15% affinity Artian weapons a viable option if you're looking for 100% crit but more damage. Realistically, even with a 25% affinity on your weapon, your crit rate is going to be floating around 80% to 100% due to needing wounds to reach that 100%. A 15% affinity weapon changes that 80% into a 70%. For dual blades who swing all the time, getting a 7 out of 10 chances to crit is still really good. Now that we have our weapon configured, here's exactly what I would slot into the Artian weapon. Number 1, we talked about it already, Master's Touch. The cornerstone of this build, more DPS uptime, it's great. Next up is Critical Boost level 3. This skill turns a normally 25% damage increase when you crit into a 34% increase instead. As we'll be critting all the time, this damage boost value becomes very substantial. As things are right now as well, Crit Boost 3 is a bit more valuable in terms of damage contribution than Crit Element, simply because across the board, elemental damage will be a lot lower than raw damage per hit, and if you want to learn more about that, there should be a video on the top right of the screen going over how raw and elemental damage is applied to a monster in a simple to understand way. Next jewel we're going to equip is the element boost of whatever the weapon is, level 3, plus Crit Element. Plus Crit Element is really important here because we have a high amount of affinity, we don't want that to go to waste. Not to mention that dual blades really benefit from elemental damage, so any ways we can add that elemental damage is great. In future, Critical Element 3 will probably be better than Critical Boost. However, right now with the base endgame roster and the amount of element we can stack up, it seems that Critical Boost 3 is a better bang for buck value for a 3-slot decoration. Additionally, while we can get Crit Element as a secondary skill to a very nice skill like Element Boost, we cannot do the same with Critical Damage Boost. With this setup of having 3 crit boosts and 1 crit element boost, we're making full use of affinity for both element and raw damage sources. Level 3 element boost is such an efficient stat stick that we should definitely be abusing this whenever we can. If you're using a stat ailment weapon like Paralyze or Poison, you could go for crit boost level 5 instead, or use a status up decoration. Alternatives to the +1 crit element includes Handicraft 1, Focus 1, Power Prolonger 1, or even Razor Sharp. Once you have all the decorations you need, you're gonna be melting everything. This build is aggressive, it does a lot of damage, it staggers all the time, and is a lot of fun. While it feels like there's a lot to manage with the Adrenaline Rush and the Black Eclipse and the Burst, it's not that hard at all. You're gonna be in flow state when you play with this build, and you're gonna love it. This is my favorite build so far in Monster Hunter Wilds, and I'll be sure to upgrade it as title updates come in and more new skills and new equipment comes out. Until then, enjoy this insanely powerful optimized build that will bring your dual blades to the next level. If you have any questions or suggestions, let us know in the comments below. For more fun and powerful builds, check out this video on screen right now. My name is Varsona, and I'll see you in the next video.